if you're a Power 2 head coach, for sure, some Power 4, the college football playoff can save your job. It can change perception of your program. And it can also help lose your job. Yep. You know, like it takes you to a different plateau to get into the 12. Case in point, consider Kalen DeBoer, where a week ago at this time, Alabama's in the college football playoff. Now, the committee had them ranked 11th, but he didn't make the playoff. That's the expectation at Bama. This season will be remembered by, did you make the playoff or not? Now think about Dabo Swinney. Preseason discussion. And now Clemson's in the playoff.
Also, post-week 1 discussion. Think about that with Dabo Swinney.
No doubt.
Getting housed by Georgia on a neutral field.
Post-South Carolina discussion. And then Syracuse happens with Miami, and all of a sudden they have another opportunity. Again, they were able to not backdoor their way in, but they win their conference. I am intrigued to know how ADs, how the chancellors and the board of trust handle the expectations now of a fan base that expands past the Power 4, both with the conferences and with the 14 playoff now to a 12, and soon we'll go to a 14 or 16, what they're discussing.
Yeah, it's going to be shifting levels of expectation based on the program and based on what you've done in the past and what the expectation is moving forward with a new 12-team playoff. I'm fascinated to see how all this plays out. Dabo Swinney is a good example. Dabo and Clemson, they're hosting a big-time transfer portal possible addition. So
how about that?
Maybe he's changing his mind a bit on the transfer portal.
Circumstances.
Hosting a big Purdue edge rusher over the weekend. So Dabo may even be adapting a little bit with all this. I think for those programs that are on the edge, a Tennessee getting in the way they did this year, well, that's good news for Josh Heupel. But what's the catch-22 of that? Well, now, if you don't go next year, it's a disappointment to the fan base. Yeah. And if you don't go the next 2 years, suddenly your job is in trouble. Shane Beamer at South Carolina, staying with the SEC. Oh, you didn't make it? You got close? Well, now we've seen enough to know maybe we can get there eventually. So if you continue to go year after year and not go, it becomes a problem. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. We know what the expectation was this year. It was playoff or bust. They didn't do it.
No.
Eli Drinkwitz in Missouri.
They were set up perfectly.
A veteran team with a quarterback and Luther Burden coming back also at receiver. Schedule for the SEC set up pretty well for them.
Yes.
And they're not there. So I guess it's buyer beware. You're right. It can both provide security for your job, but also put a lot more pressure on you.
Yeah, the discussion about Dabo has really, really quietened with considering what we're now looking at with Bama. Beamer compared to Kiffin. Beamer, it almost feels like it's a win and a victory for South Carolina with the way they finished the season and the push to get in and everyone making an argument for them. They're a top 12 team right now in the country. Meanwhile, Ole Miss.
Yeah, he's never been more secure. We're not saying he's in trouble now, but yeah, you're right though. Eventually, it's like, hey, you got close. Let's get close again or break through. Yeah.
Kick in the door. The versions of Drinkwitz and Beamer that are in the playoff that, as you think about who really took a big step forward, they kick off our hot seat meter, the pressure gauge. Coaches that are playing on the upcoming college football playoff weekend that are facing some heat or maybe not. Not the coaches that get the bye, the ones playing this weekend. And
I would say pressure to do something in the playoff.
Well,
I don't know that any of these guys are on the hot seat except for one.
Not
maybe
hot seat, but there is one. I think we'll get to that. But I think it's the pressure and expectation that now builds based on the fact that they're in and what happens moving forward, and the path that you have to get to the title game based on the format of the bracket. There 8 coaches, obviously, but there's really no. We start looking at who's under the least amount of pressure. It's really 2. Moving forward, Rhett Lashley and Kirk Cignetti, tremendous job. Let's start with Cignetti, Chad. The Indiana Hoosiers, and then the Rhett Lashley with SMU, both come out of nowhere, and not just meet expectations, but now set a standard that other coaches that didn't get in, that are mid-tier of their conference, now have the expectation of we're paying you what? Let's get this done. And we could do it here. I think that's the other thing.
And I know Kurt Cignetti got a big raise and a contract extension.
Yeah.
These 2 coaches are in let's lock them up mode. in that their ADs are saying, let's make sure no one comes in and outbids us for our guy, because
Right.
they are our guys. Curt Cignetti, you can Google him. You can see all the success he's had everywhere. Huge success in year one.
Google him.
Rhett Lashley, I've compared him often to, he's the Rod Tidwell of the movie Jerry Maguire. They bet on themselves at SMU. They said, we don't want the money. We don't need it. We're not going to take it for a while because we're going to be good right off the bat. That's exactly what they've done in the ACC. So no pressure. We had to put the guys on the list because they're playing first-round games, but I think we agree. No real pressure on these guys to do anything in this playoff.
It's just the gauge.
They could lose by 45 points, and everything's going to be just fine for them and their program.
And you're going to meet expectations here. But this is, you're a step above where we were with Kentucky and Stoops, where you win 7 games, you're automatically getting the extra year on your contract. No. That type of talk has gone to the wayside now because you're expanding, and especially when we get to 14 and 16. But even in the 12, what they've done at these two programs, and SMU moving to the new conference, taking the pay decrease, but getting the increase in money that is flowing into the program, tremendous job by Cignetti and Lashley. Josh Heupel, I feel like the Vols are playing with house money going into this. They didn't cruise to the playoff because there was a little tension about 2 or 3 weeks prior after the loss to Georgia. But again, and I said it then and I'll say it now, the committee's setting things up for quote-unquote playoff games during the season where you have big matchups in prime time where you feel like it matters whether or not a team's going to get in. Some did. Some of those games did. Some didn't. But the Georgia loss for Tennessee doesn't end up hurting them other than not being able to host a game. But Heupel's done a nice job. And, Chad, I know where your expectations were going into the season. They've met these. And now they're on the road, but they have a team and a defense that can travel. And Heupel can end up being, one of those coaches that climbs the staircase this season.
So I want to say, and I want to put all this in perspective for Tennessee, I want to say they were preseason in the teens, maybe 14, 15, 16, somewhere around there nationally. Yeah. So on the cusp of the playoff, but not there. They were picked 7th by the media.
Right.
To finish 7th in the SEC. They finished tied for 2nd, and they get to the college football playoff. Look, Tennessee fans, I think, had loftier goals and higher expectations than maybe a lot of the SEC media had for this Tennessee team because they've been hearing about Nico for so long. They know that the defense was going to be veteran and should be a lot better. You felt really good about it, and they knew how good Dylan Sampson was going to be, and he blew it out of the water. He was way better than anyone expected. So it's a gigantic win. Just getting there for Tennessee, they've already done enough to where Tennessee fans feel confident about the future. They feel good about the season. Now, they're in a spot where they could very well go and win. I'm not saying Tennessee fans are just throwing it out and saying, who cares now? They definitely want to beat Ohio State and want to advance in this tournament. But at the end of all of this, they're going to be very happy to be there. And in Josh Heupel, just specifically about him, there's been 3 Tennessee coaches in their history to win multiple 10-win seasons, win 10 or more games in multiple seasons. The list is General Neyland and Philip Fulmer, and now it's Josh Heupel. And he's done that in 2 of his first 4 years. So he's done a terrific job. Now, there were coaches that only played 11 games a season and all that too, but he's done a remarkable job in Knoxville.
He's an example, though, of building the gauge. And now, this is part of the job when you're playing at the top tier of college football. Mm-hmm. But, another raise is coming his way, based on where he's getting paid the same as Kiffin. That needs to change. That will. That happens during raise season, which is coming up for all these coaches. But this is my example of there's no pressure. But now the expectation is this. It already was. But even if they didn't make it, Chad, next year was, all right, we need to show some results.
Yeah.
The results are here. And now how do you build on it with Nico getting another year after a year of good play?
They're one of the it teams.
Yeah.
When we get ready to talk about next season, now Tennessee's put themselves in that rotation of teams you're always going to keep an eye on and think about their possible path to the playoff.
Right above him, but really, again, this is low pressure, low gauge. And I say low because Dabo Swinney gets in, despite being ranked, 16th by the playoff committee. They're on the road to Texas. He's been there, done. He's one of 2 head coaches right now that have won a national title among coaches who are active. And he says, hold my beer, although he would probably sip with the pinky in the air, unlike anybody else that would, go with the chug or the shotgun, because
he probably drinks milk.
He does it his way.
Beer.
I know you mentioned the portal just a second ago, but he just said, I'm going to continue to do it this way. And somehow Clemson was there in the moment to take advantage of what was a loss by Miami. Cristobal loses, Dabo wins. And to me, that's the difference in, okay, Dabo's 16th season, go about it how you want to go about it. Because, I mean, why would you change if you're him?
I can't think of many programs that are fueled more on outside doubt and hate than Clemson. I really think Dabo Swinney's in a great spot in this matchup with Texas because he loves being doubted. Now, it hasn't always paid off. It's been a program going in the wrong direction. I would argue this season they kind of went in the wrong direction for the most part, but found a way to the ACC championship game with help from Syracuse, and then they win that game. And that's a good reminder to all Clemson fans of just why you love this guy who's won multiple national titles for you in Dabo Swinney, because he wins games like this. He doesn't choke. His teams show up. They love being doubted. Dabo loves being doubted. If you'd have told me, going into all this, I would say Dabo might be at the top of this list in terms of pressure.
Yeah.
But because of the way they won this year and got to this thing, they're a team playing with house money.
It was him and Ryan Day, and now it's a mountain of one. But for this year, but who was the caller that called in and mentioned like he could, and
someone in Rock
said,
Hill?
Yeah,
I forget.
Yeah,
Josh maybe.
I wonder what he's doing.
Tyler. It was Tyler in something. Tyler in
Spartanburg.
Thank you. Yes, Tyler in Spartanburg.
Yeah, I wonder what Tyler's doing. Do you think he's going to the game in Austin?
He's probably. I wonder if Dabo's going to pull what Ryan Day did.
You know what? Come in here. If you want to apply for the job,
I wonder where the hell Tyler in Spartanburg is. The way Day said that about Lou Holtz.
Next in line, Steve Sarkisian.
A lot of different shades of orange. We're going 6'5", 4. I like it.
And so far, Chad, I mean, we're looking at coaches who programs now that expect to be where they are. If this were a 4-team playoff, I truly believe this would be a national championship or bust type year for Texas. Because the 14 playoff would still have them in their conference prior to moving to the SEC. But the SEC move changed a bit because there wasn't doubt because Texas is picked at the top of the conference. But my point here, the gauntlet of the season that everybody in the conference went through, and while the Texas schedule ended up to be heavy in their favor, every other team that was picked at the top eventually lost a game they shouldn't have. And Texas, I mean, they got beat by the team that people are choosing as the national champion. Like I look at Texas and think, yeah, that they're a lot like you just described with Clemson. They're winning, and not only that, in most cases, they're dominant up front when it matters. That is a playoff caliber team, and Sarkisian has done a nice job handling the pressure in Austin. And I mean, where he is right now, this is where he'll be every single time, no matter if they make the playoff and how deep they go. And eventually it is national championship or bust time.
Yeah, I just think it's such a huge swing for Sarkisian in Texas based on what they do in this first game. Because if they lose, those 2 losses to Georgia are going to look far worse to that fan base and that administration. If they're able to win a game and just get to the next round, I don't think it's as big of a deal because I can't get the image of them not being able to score on Georgia at all out of my mind.
Well, but
Steve Sarkisian.
But the difference is that's an overtime game where we're going back to the 2-point conversions or whatever. Like, I think it would be way different if they lose early in the playoff after a loss. If they didn't go to the title game after a loss to A&M.
Look, there's no hot seat talk or anything here from us.
Going next year, I'm saying.
I'm just saying they lost bad at home to Georgia. And then they lost to Georgia's backup quarterback in the second half in a game that was tied. Mm-hmm. I think when he went out, I can't shake that. They lost 2 games to Georgia, and Georgia at their ceiling, I've said it repeatedly, is the best team in the country. So that's a forgivable sin for Steve Sarkisian. I just think it's going to look so – this is one of the more wilder swings of win-loss and how their season looks. I think if they beat Clemson and beat them soundly at home, they're a big favorite. They're in the Final 8. You feel so much better about it, and a loss in the next round would not be as bad. I think they lose to Clemson, and everybody's thinking a lot more about those 2 losses to Georgia.
Yeah, well, and also
thinking a lot less about it if you win this game.
And they're thinking about Manning.
Yeah, and they're thinking about why didn't you play him more?
Right, but I mean, Sark is going to be right here on this. This is why everyone clamoring for Dabo, considering the success that he's brought Clemson. Of course, you're going to Austin. You're thinking, yeah, we made the SEC championship game in year one of the conference. It's time to dial up the 1-800-ASS-WHIP, every year. And let's also mention here, I believe this is the steepest spread, the line right now in the playoff. I mean, Vegas is saying playing in Austin, win.
And that's why I think there's a lot of pressure for them to get through this round.
See, now we're getting to the nervousness a bit. How nervous was Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame whenever the Northern Illinois loss happened? The quotes from articles from South Bend and across the country, quote unquote, failure on all ends across the entire program. Third year, and some of the posts, these are the results, and they've just lost out on the chance to go to the college football playoff, even in the expansion. That was actually on paper. Now, they haven't, I won't say cruised, but they have built an identity where, they've been the Mack truck on the ground. They can run the football, and I'm thinking, is Riley Leonard the quarterback that no one's discussing?
I'm also going to say this specifically about this game, and we're looking at pressure valve for the teams. If it were Ohio State or Tennessee in that 10 spot that was playing at Notre Dame,
yes,
that's a more forgivable loss than Indiana. There are countless people in the state of Indiana that just unabashedly, without shame, root for Indiana hoops and Notre Dame football. Why? Because Indiana football has been non-existent for their entire history. And Notre Dame football is the brand in the state of Indiana. And Indiana basketball is more of a brand than Notre Dame basketball. Notre Dame basketball has not been as bad as Indiana football has been. But to lose to an in-state opponent you rarely play that is known as the punching bag in that state in football, that's not a good look. And I get that Kurt Cignetti and Indiana's having a banner year and all that.
Yeah, you're right.
There's just some more baggage to that, Hutton, I think, than if they were to lose to an Ohio State or Tennessee in the first round.
Even with the loss early, if they had the home game against those two, Chad, we're looking at a program here that they're expecting to turn a corner. He's going into year 4 next year. But you're right. We're at the tier, both Sarkisian and Freeman, where you better win round 1. You need a win in the playoff based on who you're facing and the perception of having the home game and what you've done this season versus what was happening at the beginning of the year.
Well, and just imagine telling a Notre Dame fan before the year,
oh, God,
hey, you're going to lose 2 games, and you poll Notre Dame fans, they'd say, okay, it's probably going to be at A&M and at USC.
Right.
That's fine. We'll take those. Or Florida State, even in the preseason, whoever it was. But then they come back and say, no, it's going to be Northern Illinois and Indiana at home. Those are your 2 losses for the entire season. That would blow people's minds.
Right there with you. And to lose to kick off the college football playoff.
Yeah.
In the first game in primetime. Now, on a shelf all by himself, James Franklin, Jimmy Frank at Penn State. The path that they have in the bracket. There's no argument that, they lose against Oregon in the Big Ten, and they're rewarded based on the format and the criteria that the committee has to follow and how you slot these teams. Chad, I'm looking at the bracket, and I'm thinking, James Franklin should be among the semifinalists whenever it's all said and done a couple of weeks from now. That's the bar here. And if not, he's the coach that becomes the new Ryan Day if they lose early in the playoff here, because of the path and what they've done and the fact that they made it to the Big Ten championship game.
And it's another one much like Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame that I look at and say, if it were Bama in the 11th spot,
right,
and you lose to Bama, I think people kind of say, well, they're loaded with NFL players. It's kind of understandable. It's Penn State, Bama. It's 2 big-time brands in college football, and you lost to another big-time brand in college football. Oh, well, nice season. You got to the playoff. There's just something about it being SMU that puts even more pressure on James Franklin, because we're all looking at that route. And right now, I was looking this up. I think FanDuel has Penn State as a 12-point favorite over Boise State. the team with the bye if they win this game.
That's true. It's 12.5.
So double digits you're looking at for both games to get to the college football semifinal. I mean, it is on a platter for James Franklin right now.
Got to take it. Well, and so I think no matter who it would be, them playing in the first round, Chad, this is a season where you have newcomers to the conference, and Oregon goes and wins the conference in a year where you don't have to face Michigan, and you still lose to Ohio State, and you're still kind of the stepbrother to the conference. Like you're there, you win the games when you should, and then when it's time to actually become the next team in line, the next Dan Lanning version of a program, you're not ready to do it. So now it's served up, and man, it will be remembered as a semifinal team, not the path. Like years from now, it won't be the path that they got. He needs to take advantage of it.
No one's going to care how you got there. Same thing for the NCAA basketball tournament. They don't care if there were upsets along the way that got you to the Elite Eight or the Final Four. They care if you're in the Elite Eight or the Final Four.
That's right.
Or the Sweet 16. They don't care about upsets that happened that helped you get there. And that's the situation Penn State's in.
I think it's national championship or bust for Ryan Day.
Yeah, number one's easy.
Ryan Day, Ohio State, hosting when he probably wishes he was on the road because the fan base is already pissed off for greatness. And the optics here are obvious. But internally, I don't care what Ross Bjork is saying. Come on, he says absolutely going to be no. The absolute is he's going to be back on the sideline for at least one more game at Ohio Stadium. And if things don't go well and he loses another massive game in a year where they spent how much money on their roster, and we're a top to bottom talent, they're the team. But Ryan Day will be not the coach. That's what we know. And how does he respond in that pressure pack? He is on this list, the pressure valve. It is cranked up and it's cracking. Can they fix it? Can they turn down the volume? It's not they, it's one person, him. He's got to step up. This is a massive game to prove that he's the Ohio State Buckeyes head coach.
And his players are going to have to help him out a lot in this because his players did not play well against Michigan either, and not just him with the coaching. And he's got the roster to do it. There's a reason that it was, even in the preseason, national championship or bust with this Ohio State roster. And I think I'm saying the same thing you are right now, Hutton. I think at least national championship game for him to be safe for his job. I don't think people that aren't inside of that rivalry understand the existential crisis Ohio State and their fans are under with this losing streak to Michigan and what that does to them mentally. Now, playing anybody but Michigan right now is probably exactly what they need wherever that game is located. And they happen to get a home game in Columbus, Ohio. That is such a big deal to that program that I do think it's at least get to the national championship game. Upset Oregon in the Rose Bowl, a team you only lost to by 1 point in Eugene earlier this year. Do all those things and Ryan Day's safe, but fall behind early. And we're going to preview some of these games to Tennessee, and I think that coaching staff and that team get super tight in that football game.
I just think about neutral sites and then on the road, how Ryan Day's how his teams perform. Think about the Oregon game.
They were so much better.
Yes. And at home,
I keep going back to that. Remember, they lost to Michigan and then played Georgia, that great Georgia team, undefeated, to where they should have won the football game to go to the national championship on a neutral site.
Yeah. Yep. Right now, fresh OutKick gear is here. Great Christmas gifts, stocking stuffers, and we can give you 20% off for your holiday. We've got it right here at OutKick.com. Go to shop.outkick.com for all of the accessories, hoodies, tees. You've got sweatshirts and more. You can size up our new holiday sweaters, too. Guaranteed conversation starters. Here's the deal. Score 20% off with the code HOLIDAY at checkout. Use the code HOLIDAY for 20% off when you visit shop.outkick.com. Looking at this, Chad, you like, I know, the quarter zip, but I think you need a good, ugly Christmas sweater.
I've got a few.
Wear that to your family holiday.
Yeah, I've got a few. I think I've got like a Johnny Lawrence Karate Kid inspired one that says "Sweep the leg." With it, that's an ugly Christmas sweater. Yeah, but I can always add to the collection.
I need to borrow that for a party.
I'll be looking at it.
I think the D-back.
I can get that for you.
Great.
I can get that too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chad, you look great in the "I'm sexy and I mow it" shirt.
Yes, I will wear that as I'm being sexy while mowing.
which is always.
Yes.
How did we do in our preseason predictions? I know I didn't do well. I don't remember every
We can
single.
quickly just blow past this.
I don't remember every single selection I made.
Let's see how you did, Hutton.
I do know that I had Florida State. There's Florida State. Florida State in my college football play. 2-game winner. Florida State.
You still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You got 7 of the 12 correct.
I think the average.
good.
I think the average person each year should be able to get 6 or 7.
I think most of the people that I saw were like, "Oh, I got 7. That's good." They were kind of bragging on themselves on social media that they predicted 7 of the 12 correctly.
So
that's not bad.
So we know Florida State. My biggest issue of not meeting the bar is Missouri. I mean, they go from that Eli Drinkwitz talking all the trash, right? Like,
I think I counted wrong. You think you got 6?
6.
Yeah,
talking
sorry.
all the trash. And I
take back my statement.
I know that I made the error of putting Oregon in the Pac-12 for one more year, but I'm thinking, man, come on, Missouri. If I'm putting all my money in trying to get 8, Missouri would have screwed me. I'd be more pissed off at Missouri than I would Florida State.
Well, we all have our mistakes, and you'll see mine here.
What do you have?
As we show my bracket. My mistakes were buying into the Big 12 preseason media predictions and thinking both Utah and Oklahoma State were going to be something. Those are 2 of the worst teams in the Big 12. So I was way off on that one. But outside of that, not bad. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8.
I got 8 of the 12 correct. We'll take it.
That's well done.
Hey, for a guy who never wins and wrong team favored and consistently finishes dead last, I will take any damn victory I can get, and I will claim victory over this preseason prediction. Well done by me. Great job, and I should go brag about this on social media.
The victor.
But I don't want to be that guy that brags about it on social media because that's annoying to me when I see people do it.
We'll boast after we get the national title
I told
game
everyone about Notre Dame in the preseason.
Yeah. Everyone be on the Irish.
I told you.
Well,
Clemson is back, baby.
Let's tell everyone who's winning the opening round games. Notre Dame. Let's go in order of kickoff. Notre Dame taking on Indiana. Friday night, ABC. First time since 1990 that a home game is not going to be played on a network other than NBC. The Irish, a 7.5-point favorite. A game that will be won in the trenches here. Notre Dame run game is elite and 10th in the country. Indiana has the top-ranked run defense in college football. This is the type of game that I think Notre Dame wants. They welcome it. And I don't know if Indiana can force Notre Dame to throw the football as much as they need to. So I'm taking the Irish. I can't wait for the game. I nearly picked the upset, but I'm taking the Irish at home here.
I'm going to take the Irish, too, in this game. Here's the big thing that jumps out to me about this matchup. Now, both these teams, remarkably, we're going to go through all these teams.
Yeah.
Every team that's in the playoff, you want to talk about the committee getting it right or having confirmation statistically of how these are the 12 best teams in the country? Every team that's in this playoff ranks top 10 in both scoring and total offense and top 10 in both scoring and total defense, with the exception of 2 teams. Boise State is right on the outside of the top 10 defensively, and Clemson, I think, is at 17 defensively, but still in the top 20. That's pretty crazy.
That is.
When you look at that, of all those different categories they rank in. It's the secondary of Notre Dame. Indiana has faced one great secondary this year. It's Ohio State, who statistically has the best defense in all of college football. Curtis Rourke in that game, Hutton, was 8 for 18 for 68 yards. Now they're going up against Xavier Watts with 5 interceptions this season and a stout Notre Dame secondary and defense. Indiana, yes, they can run the football. They rely, though, on their passing game more than anything else. I think Notre Dame's got the horses to stymie them. So I like Notre Dame in this game.
And let's not fail to mention Notre Dame's front, because Indiana has not fared well when they are facing future NFL talent across the line of scrimmage. Think about the Ohio State game that you mentioned. But also, I mean, they win the game, but the Michigan game comes to mind for me too.
Yeah.
Those two counted. There were 9 sacks in those 2 games. Half of the sacks allowed this season came against those fronts. So can Notre Dame, who's got a couple of interior defensive linemen that are legit, can they get up? I think they can. Next up,
SMU Penn State.
Nittany Lions.
The James Franklin Bowl.
So the winner's going to get Boise in the Fiesta Bowl. That's a kickoff coming up for Penn State and SMU Saturday, noon Eastern on TNT. Can the Mustangs shock everyone? Is it too simple? Because the Mustangs are they're not as high powered, but they score actually more. They average more points than Oregon. And we just saw Oregon put up 45 points on Penn State. There's SMU 6th in the country, averaging 39 points per game. But Penn State's defense, while they may have allowed 45 points and 450, 475 yards to Oregon, I'm not going to be fooled here, because even with those numbers factored in, they are still 8th in the country in total defense. So that factored in with the cold weather, to me, that's the difference in the game. And I think it's closer than many expect. I think there are some tight moments where Franklin's going to have to make the right calls in managing this game. But Penn State's advancing, and I think they take advantage of the bracket a bit here.
Kevin Jennings, the SMU quarterback, really good player, very efficient, good runner, good athlete. Kind of surprised me to see Drew Aller actually has more rushing yards than Kevin Jennings. He is very, very good when he gets pressured and has to take off. Not even Kevin Jennings gets more design run calls for him, quarterback runs. Drew Aller still has more rushing yards because of his ability to get out of the pocket. Hutton, statistically, Penn State is way better than SMU in almost every category. Just going down the list. The one thing that gives me pause is James Franklin.
I know.
It is the only thing.
I agree with you, man.
And if that's the reason I'm having pause for this, I'm not going to take the bait and pick SMU. I think James Franklin is going to win this game because his team is better and they're at home. So give me Penn State.
Okay. I want to point out one thing here. This is not a barometer on whether or not the committee got it right. If this ends up being a game where the score is separated on the final stat sheet, I don't want to hear it should have been Bama, should have been Bama.
Yep, you're going to hear it, though.
I know, but
I hate that, too.
Going into the playoff, I just want the committee got it right based on what they were told to do and how they were supposed to lay this out, period. So, I mean, they had SMU ahead of Bama going into last weekend. They've got them here because that's how things work in a playoff format that all the commissioners, including the SEC commissioner who helped lead this, put all together. So, could it be a blowout? Yes. I expect this to be a fourth quarter game.
I expect it to be a good game. I think Penn State wins it. And yes, the committee was judging the 12 or 13 games they had in front of them to select the committee, not the 14th in this case for SMU.
Right.
So whatever they do in this matchup could be a bad matchup, could turn the ball over a lot, could not play well, does not matter. Don't use the outcome to reinforce the, they got it wrong and Bama should have been in it, or they definitely got it right because SMU won the game. I don't think you base it on either of those.
Yes. To the nightcap, to Austin, Texas, where...
Not quite the nightcap. Late afternoon game.
The sun will be set.
Yeah, leading into the nightcap.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yes, the sun will be setting, but not on the college football season for Clemson.
Will the eyes of Texas be upon them?
Let me put it this way. I think Texas has a much more difficult path in this playoff than what many are saying and what the odds would tell you, because the winner is going to get Arizona State, who is one of the hottest teams in the country. Now, could they cool off with the time off? Sure. But they have to get by Clemson and a coaching staff that has just as many branches on the tree of scouting and recruiting and X factors as you do. Another college football powerhouse on the road where I don't think this can be emphasized enough. Cade Klubnik went to Westlake High School in Austin, Texas. And he's back with the Clemson Tigers playing against Texas in round one of the college football playoff with Dabo Swinney, a national championship winning head coach. Give me the Tigers in the upset. They'll advance.
So Dabo loves being doubted. I mentioned this earlier. He loves it when there's a lot of doubt around his team. This is actually, you mentioned Cade Klubnik at Westlake High School, Austin, Texas. This is a rematch between Klubnik and Quinn Ewers. They met for the 6A state championship back in 2021. Cade Klubnik and Westlake handled that game with relative ease against Southlake Carroll. I think Cade Klubnik's about to go 2-0 against Quinn Ewers in his career. It's a homecoming for Klubnik. I think Clemson has whatever mojo they need. Mm-hmm. I think Texas, there's a lot of doubts coming out of that overtime loss to Georgia. Give me, and I can't believe I'm saying this, give me Clemson. I do have a question about Phil Maffa and his health. the running back for Clemson. I want him to be 100% healthy before really feeling confident about this pick. But I'm with you. I think Clemson gets the upset.
All of a sudden, it's going to be, Dabo's the king of the mountain again. And
our savior is back.
Yeah, it's funny how that will change if it happens. And, hey, if Texas wins, okay. There's the path.
Tyler and Spartanburg's have to call in and say, Coach, I was so wrong. I'm sorry. You're worth every penny. We should give you a raise.
And I like
worth every penny.
Quinn Ewers on the road. I like him in the big hostile environments. It's going to be loud, but it'll be quiet whenever he's on. I don't see or remember the big moments for him at home versus on the road. And yeah. I want to see Klubnik pull it off. And he's been better than I think people realize with Clemson this year.
Now the nightcap.
The nightcap. This is a flag planting game. Tennessee heads to Columbus to take on Ohio State. The possible last chance that a team will ever have to plant a flag at midfield without it being a felony, a Class 5 felony. All seriousness, though, Tennessee has the talent to win this. They have the defense to win this. And I watch and go, with the winner getting Oregon and all the pressure being on Ohio State and Ryan Day, and I believe Tennessee's playing with house money a bit. Give me the Vols. Give me the Vols to advance and end Ryan Day's tenure as the head coach at Ohio State. It's not all about that, but I haven't seen Ohio State meet the moment truly when everyone's all eyes on Columbus and whether or not they're going to show up and show out. And while it may be a shootout, I think the defensive front of Tennessee gets it done, man.
So I talked earlier about top 10 rankings, efficiency, offense, total offense, defense, everything else. These numbers, Hutton, these rankings. Ohio State, to show how close these teams are. Ohio State nationally, scoring offense, 7th, total offense, 9th. Scoring defense, number 1, total defense.
Okay.
Number 1 for the Buckeyes, okay? Tennessee, scoring offense, 5th, total offense, 2nd nationally. So a better offense for Tennessee than Ohio State's defense. Defensively, scoring defense 4th, total defense 4th. Top 5 in both. Then the question becomes, who played the tougher schedule, right? Because Ohio State has those two top 10 wins over Penn State and Indiana. So if you think Tennessee didn't play as tough a schedule, maybe their numbers are skewed a little bit for that reason. I think this game is a toss-up in terms of talent. On-field ability and what these teams do well, they both do them very well. I think Ohio State wins at home.
You do?
And here's why. Tennessee has been bad in hostile road environments. I know there may be 20 to 30,000 Tennessee fans at this game. It's still going to be a home field advantage for Ohio State. Penalties. Tennessee's a bad penalty team this year. And when you add crowd noise, cold weather, whatever else you want to throw into there, I sense a lot of procedural penalties. And when you go from 2nd and 7 to 2nd and 12 against this Ohio State defense in an extreme cold weather game, if it gets to that, you might as well go ahead and quick kick, because you're not going to beat this team and get first downs if you're getting behind the sticks. Tennessee will shoot themselves in the foot with penalties. They're going to get behind the sticks. They're going to lose a low-scoring game in this one. I think it's very close. I think these two teams are actually closer talent-wise and play-wise than I was expecting when I started to dive into it. But I think Ohio State wins at home.
Okay. Briefly here.
This would be the biggest win for Josh Heupel to go on the road and win this game, even bigger than ending the streak against Alabama.
Here's why I don't buy Ohio State. They get whipped up front on the offensive line. And
if you blitz, they're not good at handling it. That's for sure.
And let's go to the other side of it. Michigan pushed them around on the defensive front. Tennessee's got the SEC Player of the Year in the backfield. Run the damn ball.
Oh, they're going to do that.
And if you get out to an early lead, run it. Run the ball and take the air out of that stadium. All the previews you're hearing, fast-paced, high-scoring offense, pass-happy. It's an analyst who hasn't watched this team play.
No, they're a tough-nosed, run the football team.
So they're not Michigan, but that's how you would describe Michigan.
Yeah. They just do it from a different
They're
formation.
not Michigan.
That's the only difference.
But
right, they're
I'm
not
saying
lining up with a fullback is the only difference of what Tennessee
the
does.
description isn't the way you would describe Tennessee, the way you describe Michigan. But that's what they do to win.
Yep.
And Nico, while on the road, he lost at Arkansas, lost at Georgia. This is different if you can get the lead and sit on it and play out the game, and Heupel stacks calls and keeps possession. You're right about the penalties. And there's always going to be poor officiating. The officials suck. But I'm not going to look at that after the game. I'm going to look at whether or not Heupel can outcoach Day. And Ryan Day is under the microscope. How many times can we hear a story or read a story saying, oh, he's absolutely expected to be back? The vote of confidence is the kiss of death here. Yeah. And I think Michigan's already delivered it.
And a matchup to watch is Tim Banks, Tennessee defensive coordinator, against Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator for Ohio State. Because another thing that gives me pause about Tennessee is Georgia had just given up so much pressure and sacks to Ole Miss, and Tennessee did nothing.
They have to.
They tried nothing. They didn't blitz. They did nothing to affect Carson Beck in that loss to Georgia. And I'm seeing some similarities with Ohio State and how they protect. So if Tim Banks is going to get creative and send guys from different spots that get there quickly and can affect that Ohio State passing game or even run blitz at times and blitz the running game, I feel better about Tennessee. But I did not see that against Georgia.
Yeah, you're right. It might just come down to Heupel versus Kelly.
Yep.
And the styles that I think people perceive them to be not the same. Okay.
Either way, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, so I'm picking two road upsets here, Tennessee and Clemson. Chad, you've got one, right?
I got Clemson.
Okay. Clemson winning. Championship, I expect this to be Oregon versus Notre Dame. That's in my head where I have
And are
this.
you taking the Ducks?
I'm taking the Ducks to win.
The Ducks have been the best team all year. That's a solid pick. I've said it before. I'll say it right here. Georgia has the highest ceiling of any team in the country. They could also get bounced in the first game they play because they've been wildly inconsistent at times.
Yep.
I think Kirby Smart and that experience wins out in the end. I'm taking Georgia over Oregon in the national championship game.
I'm taking Dan Lanning, and I'm not going with. I just think I don't know what happens at quarterback at Georgia.
This could be the coronation for Dan Lanning.
I don't know what happens at quarterback with Georgia. That's my only reservation in not going with Kirby Smart.